Join us now on Flickr at flickr.com/groups/art of photography.
Welcome to the Art of Photography. I'm Ted Forbes. Today we're going to take a little bit of a break from kind of our standard workflow of technique and things like that. And I want to specifically talk about a photographer named Robert Frank. Now, Robert Frank is a fine art photographer best known for his 1958 publication called The Americans, which is this book that I'm holding right here. Now, the reason I'm going to tell you about Robert Frank is I was in Washington, D.C. last week, and this is actually last year was the 50th anniversary of the original publication of the book. And this year they're doing a year-long museum tour, and they've actually reprinted the book. And I think it's probably, I would say arguably, one of the most important photography compilations of the 20th century. And there's a couple reasons I feel this way about it. But anyway, Robert Frank was born in 1924 in Zurich, Switzerland, and at a fairly young age came to the United States, had studied design and photography, and began to work as a freelance photojournalist, working for magazines like Harper's Bazaar and Vogue, things like that. And he also kind of had another foot in the fine art world. He did a multi-photographer exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York that was organized by Edward Stecken. But anyway, Robert Frank in the 1950s became friends with Jack Kerouac, and who wrote the intro to his book, and actually through the help of some other people had secured the Guggenheim Fellowship that year, and was basically got a grant to go across the United States to fulfill his concept he had of shooting Americans in everyday life. And so the result is the book, The Americans. This book has been out of print for a while. You can find copies. If you have a hardback copy, it's definitely worth money because it's been out of print. I found a paperback edition for about $10 in a used bookstore, so it is possible to still find. And actually last year, for the 50th anniversary of the original publication, they actually reprinted the book. And as a catalog for the exhibition, they've released an extended Americans too, which is definitely worth getting, that has some more stuff and some contact sheets, things like that. But anyway, in the 50s, Robert Frank started a tour across the United States in a beat-up old car with his camera in tow. And his objective was to just film Americans in everyday life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be celebrities. It didn't necessarily have to be people anybody would know. But these series of photos really capture a vibe and a feel and look that is a place and time from that era. And when it was released, it was not a huge welcome reception. In fact, a lot of the photography magazines were bashing it for not having enough depth to the development and the print and things like that. But much like they are today, a lot of photography magazines are based on selling gear and wouldn't recognize this kind of thing. But this really has secured a famous place in history, in the fine art world at least. The reason I say it's one of the most important compilations of photographs in the 20th century is because it was put together to be a book. And so, a lot of times you'll see exhibitions or books of photographers and artists, and they're kind of a compilation of various pieces they've done, work they've done throughout their career. But this specific exhibition and book was put together as a unit. And, the legend has it, and I'd be likely inclined to believe it, that Frank took probably about 28,000 photographs when he was traveling across the U.S. in two different trips to make the photos. And of these, 83 were selected for the final publication. Now, here's kind of another interesting fact too, that from publication to publication over the years, little things have changed. Frank himself has actually gone back and done some recropping on certain photos. So that's kind of just a little interesting collector's note there on the books. But anyway, the reason that I'm mentioning this in this podcast is we talk a lot about technique, and we talk a lot about, all the things you could, not just my podcast, but there are a lot of others that go very deeply into gear and then post-processing equipment, software, things like that. And, most of us understand, and it's completely obvious, that none of that makes you a better photographer, and none of that makes a great photo. If you don't have the photo captured right out of the lens, compositionally and, with an eye for something that's interesting, it's not going to be that great of a photo. It is what it is. And Robert Frank is, we've talked about composition on here before, rule of thirds, things like that, and you're not going to see a lot of these things in Frank's work. Frank's work is about being very raw, being very, just kind of capturing a feel and an emotion. Sometimes the exposures are a little off. Sometimes the print could be better. But that's not what Frank's work is about. Robert Frank is about capturing an essence and capturing a time and a place and a feel. In fact, various accounts say that Robert Frank was actually kind of disillusioned after moving to America. He felt that there was a large emphasis on money and class and things like that. And, which is interesting. I think things have probably changed a lot since the 50s, but this exhibition really captures that. And again, you could certainly buy the book, and I recommend having the book. It's kind of essential. But if you are anywhere near any of the cities that this exhibition will be in this year, the book never replaces being able to go into a gallery and see all 83 of these prints hanging there and see the prints in person with other people. There's really a magic to that I don't think you get just with a book. But anyway, right now it's showing at the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C., which is where I saw it last week. After that, this year, it's going to be going to the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and then after that to New York, to the Museum of Modern Art there. So if you're anywhere in these three cities, and keep an eye on it because they may expand it beyond those. But this is definitely worth checking out. And like I said, Robert Frank, he's just one of the major figures in 20th century photography. You need to know who he is. So anyway, hope that's been interesting. This has been The Art of Photography. Thanks for watching.